I'm Zach Bagans. I'm one of the world's leading researchers on ghosts and demonology. Whenever I'm talking about it, whenever I was watching it, editing the film, things would happen to me.
What just happened? You attacked Jay.
Welcome back to Pagan Valley, everyone. It has been a while since I first posted part 1 of the Indiana Hell House, and I am thrilled that video has done as well as it did. And it's thanks to all of you. Since then, I felt like I have owed all of you the proper conclusion to that story. Like I said in the first video, the evil that lives behind this home's door didn't stop with LaToya and her family. If you haven't watched part 1, then I implore you to go back and watch it. For everyone who is caught up, let's get into it and witness the end of the most dangerous haunting in the state of Indiana. But first, I want to remind you that I'm always putting out content similar to this on my channel, so if you want more paranormal and true crime investigations such as this, then why don't you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel? It really helps YouTube know that Pagan Valley is going to be one of the best horror channels on the platform. It was years after LaToya Amon's case ended. The now infamous house was passing through renters faster than any home in Gary, Indiana. The cycle was always the same. A tenant would move in, not believing the hauntings and wanting to move out in just a few months. For almost a year, the house sat empty until a bachelor moved in and stomached the apparent hauntings. Working closely with Police Captain Austin and the house's owner, Charles Reed, to make it as livable as possible. But just like all the others, eventually, the brave man moved out of the house, and again the home waited patiently for its next victim. Surprising Captain Austin and all of Gary, Indiana, an unlikely ally would come and stand up against the terrifying home of demons. I may be wrong here, but I think anyone with a vague understanding of the paranormal knows the name Zach Bagans. For those of you who don't know, Zach Bagans is the famous paranormal investigator and host of the incredibly popular show Ghost Adventures. Unfortunately, there's little more about Zach's backstory available to the public due to privacy, but Zach is a film producer, actor, and book writer. Although nothing has done more for the paranormal investigator's career than Ghost Adventures. Now, I don't want to talk about the validity of paranormal ghost hunting shows because that's not important to this story, but I must mention the fact that many people believe shows like Ghost Adventures is all completely fake. It's possible aspects of these shows are dramatized, but I personally think they're fine. Ghost Adventures makes me kind of nostalgic for when I was a more easily scared child. Also, I believe the histories or mysteries of these haunted locations the crew goes to are far more interesting than the spirits that may or may not live within them. Regardless, I hope this gives context for who Zach Bagans is, because the Zach that walked into the house would not be the same Zach that would end up leaving it in the end. Zach Bagans had learned about the LaToya Amon story, and wanting to break away from Ghost Adventures, believed the story had the chops to be a great documentary. So, in 2018, Zach and a new team of investigators traveled to Gary, Indiana to shoot for his film. Not wanting to deal with property rights, Zach had bought the home from the previous owner for around $50,000. Now, I don't want this video to sound like a recap of the documentary, so I'm going to move kind of quickly here. Basically, the investigation had begun with getting footage of the home on the outside and traveling across the state to interview everyone who had been involved with the home. Captain Austin and Father Maggio explained the Amon's events, and Zach and his team learn the history of the home and the horrible story of LaToya Ammons' family. Then the team entered the home confident they could witness whatever was in the demon house themselves, and the house gave them what they sought after. During this documentary, it is clear the longer the group stays in the house or working on the film, their mental state slowly starts to decline. From the basement of the demon house to their hotel room, the only way I can describe it for you is pure hell. Their expressions and attitudes towards each other begin to deteriorate to what borders on torture. Eventually, Zach Bagans believed he was being toyed with by whatever was spiritual in the house. So taking it upon himself, with nothing but a camera and his courage, Zach moved into the home alone and planned to confront whatever attacked the Ammons family. It goes as well as you expect it to, with Zach panicking and struggling in the home, but somehow surviving through several nights. At this point, you can either believe Zach Bagans' story of what he experienced in the house or not. And again, if you are interested in Zach's part of the story, then please watch his documentary Demon House. Real or not, it is very interesting, and Zach can describe his experiences better than I can. I will tell you that ever since that night he tried to stay alone in the house, Zach has had a permanent eye disability that he will have for the rest of his life. An injury that I personally think could have been caused by something in the home. So if you're wondering why in older photos and videos Zach doesn't wear glasses, but in newer ones he wears big thick lenses, it isn't because he thinks they're fashionable, it's because he's practically blind without them. And I haven't found any evidence proving it was because of some other reason. In the end, I think Zach reached a conclusion most of you have probably gotten to yourself. The house is beyond saving, and Zach, taking the $50,000 loss, had the house destroyed and the lot left vacant, which is still visible to this day. The house was gone and could never hurt another family ever again. The most obvious theory about this whole paranormal investigation is the psychological distress of LaToya Ammons and her family. There is a lot of evidence that points towards the Ammons family basically making all of this up to excuse bad behavior, such as her kids not going to school. Also, Captain Austin has been quoted as a firm believer in the paranormal, which a lot of investigators say is evidence that he was just buying into the Ammons story. If all there was to this story was just people talking about what had happened to them, then I would be more inclined to believe this theory that it was all being made up by the family. But there are other characters like Charles Reed, the owner, and Valerie Washington, the DCS agent, and they have been recorded saying that they don't believe in the paranormal but have admitted to witnessing events they couldn't explain. Or what about the event at the hospital, where even trained medical professionals had witnessed one of LaToya's sons levitate up the wall? That event made it into the DCS case log and the police incident report with several witnesses. And there is Father Maginot, who is probably the most divisive part of both the paranormal and psychological distress theories. Some skeptics would argue that Father Maginot was eager to perform an exorcism so he could become famous for creating an event similar to the movie The Exorcist. While paranormal investigators have argued that Father Maginot has said that he was persistent in not wanting to do an exorcism, and that's why LaToya and her family were sent for psychological testing first. And an exorcism is not exactly something a priest can just do. There are several layers of religious bureaucracy that Maginot would have to go through, such as the bishops and cardinals in the area, for their approval. And Maginot said that the only reason he performed it himself was that he was the only priest in the area who studied demonology in seminary school, a must-need in order to perform a proper exorcism. Also, I don't know why LaToya Ammons and her family would make up this elaborate story. It's not like they have become worldwide famous in pop culture. Other than to paranormal enthusiasts, no one really knows of this case, and the Amons family isn't exactly looking pretty at the end of the story. LaToya's kids were taken away from her and sent to boarding schools, and she has to attend state-mandated psych evaluations, and barely socializes with anyone outside her family like her mother and her siblings, because they are afraid that someone might restart this nightmarish event all over again. No matter which is true, people's lives got pretty fucked up, and I don't see this enormous payout that was worth the nightmarish events. The Hell House of Gary, Indiana is truly one of the state's weirdest and scariest mysteries. Just like everyone else, I can't even begin to puzzle out what was happening in that home. It didn't just take an emotional toll on people, it devastated them mentally, spiritually, and even physically. Like most people who knew of this house, I'm happy to know it was gone and no one can be harmed by its terrible effects. I knew the second half of this story was going to be much shorter, and that is because I would rather you see Zach Bagans' documentary to get what I feel like is the true ending of this story. It got me interested in LaToya Amons, and if you have any more curiosity for the story, then Zach's work is a must-see. Also, there is an enormous elephant in the room that I have neglected to mention, which is the opportunity for these tragic events to be milked by Hollywood. When the story came out back in 2012, it was already given titles like The Next Amityville or The Real Life Exorcist. Now, I like horror movies and I plan to talk about some in future videos, but movies that try and recreate tragedies while the original victims are still feeling the effects of the event is really exploitative. Yes, Demon House could technically fall into this conflict, but that documentary focuses more on the Hell House than on the Amons family. Anyway, if a stranger were to come to me and ask about one of the most paranormal events in Indiana's history, I would have to point them towards the Hell House. It was a living nightmare that is both wickedly captivating and completely confusing. When I first started part 1 of the Hell House investigation, I mentioned that most haunted houses still sell on the market and people live within them with no problems. But it's stories like the Amons case that would make anyone afraid of this unknown. Because this wasn't a spooky location you would think would have this kind of paranormal influence. It was just someone's home, and it could have happened to anyone. Just pray it doesn't happen to you. Thank you all for watching to the end of the video. I know it feels like forever since I posted part 1 of the Indiana Hell House, but I've been using this time as kind of a trial for this channel. I knew coming back to this would make me feel some closure, but not this much. It feels like the end of this channel's first chapter, and with passing 50 subscribers, I'm excited to see where this channel goes with all of you. But although it's sad to finish the story that started this channel, I'm excited to see this next journey for Pagan Valley, and I can't wait to go on it with all of you. For now, you all have a great evening, and I'll see you in the next one.